I think you're more of a cult leader than you are like an actual like. I mean, I definitely wouldn't consider you a political pundit.
But unaddressed how? Anytime these people are brought up to me, I ban them. I don't tolerate it happening ever in my community. I don't tolerate comments like that. I have a son. Why the f I tolerate people telling other people that their children should die? Leaving the whole transports thing, because obviously that's like the most like insanely contentious topic. Like, do you think that I have any other like insanely transphobic positions, or is this like the only one? So why would we attack the integrity of the entire division for like such a hyper niche thing? It's like so much political and social capital is used on this issue.
How you feeling about the old ban?
Hello.
How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing well. So you want to chat?
Yeah, you were probably saying dumb shit on Twitter, but I don't remember what it was.
No, I just said that I thought you looked and sounded like Mike Cernovich.
What did I say that looked and sounded like Mike Cernovich?
No, I think you physically look like Mike Cernovich. I think you physically sound like Mike Cernovich. Like your actual voice
really the
and
extent of like
your body. Well, and I think generally speaking, you appear to me to be a pretty toxic dude. Like, it seems to me like you're always talking up like how much you want to do for progressive causes in the left, but it seems like you spend a lot of time punching left and shitting on people that are fucking marginalized groups. And I'm just kind of curious, like, is it like something in you that just like shitting on people, or like what is it?
So I don't ever market myself as like, I want to do a lot for progressive causes. I don't need that. I don't have that white savior complex in me. Like I know a lot of you guys do. So that's not what I market myself as. There are causes that I mean, yeah, I know. I just like to, when people just make up shit about me, I like to correct it when I have the opportunity to. Secondly, in terms of punching left a lot, yeah, I mean, like a lot of the online discourse is dominated by very, very, very far left, like insanity. So that tends to be what I kind of hit on right now. You guys managed to get a lot of the conservatives banned on a lot of these spaces, so there's not much about them to talk about. So yeah, this is kind of the world that we live in now.
Wait, you guys, who is you guys? Did I get somebody banned?
The very far left kind of like cultural push like removed a lot of the conservative speakers and people from these platforms, so there's not really much for me to respond to anymore in terms of like conservative people on Twitter or like conservative YouTubers. Like they're all just like very insular now.
So instead of coalition building, it's more fruitful to punch left.
Are you accusing me of having the problem building a coalition when I've got fans from like far left, center, mid-right, and even some far right? Do you think I'm the problem when it comes to coalition building?
Because the thing is that the people who are your audience, by and large, just fall in line with whatever the fuck you say. I mean, you have an online cult. You don't have. I wouldn't even call it a following. I think you're more of a cult leader than you are like an actual like. I mean, I definitely wouldn't consider you a political pundit. As a matter of fact, I wouldn't consider most of the people on Twitch a political pundit, to be clear. I think there's a bunch of LARPers posing as political pundits, yourself included. A lot of people that like to play like they know everything and they've got all the answers, and their answer is the ultimate and be-all answer to everything. And if you don't believe the way I do, then I'm gonna shit all fucking over you. And that's exactly what you seem to do to people.
Okay.
And I don't see how that's fruitful. I don't see how that helps anything or anyone, or helps even if you have a modicum of interest in pushing any progressive cause, even on the slightest bit, even if you don't market yourself as that. You would think that the very, very least you'd spend more time dealing with solutions than finding ways to punch at people. And instead, it seems like all you want to do is fucking talk shit to people. Like, that's legit what I see when I see your posts. It's a non-stop
okay, sorry, keep going. Okay.
No, go ahead. The floor is yours.
Okay. It's really tempting to shut on you because I know that you don't probably engage with much of my stuff, but I'm actually working on a big piece right now about people's perceptions of me, which I think are very interesting, okay? The concept of who I am to you, in your mind, there exists like a version of me that I don't believe is real. Obviously, you think it's real, and obviously you think that I have some incentive to try to say it is not real because it doesn't suit me for like online discourse or whatever, right? But I'm just curious. There's like a couple of questions. So, have you ever actually watched any of my videos, or have you only ever watched people's clips of my videos?
Some of your videos, yeah, absolutely. A few years ago, I actually liked a lot of your content. It just seems like it's gotten more vitriolic over the past. Well, and
Sure.
I'll be frank. I'll be frank with you. I've been on Twitch for 7 months. I had never even fucking touched a Twitch account before that. I'm not currently on Twitch. Obviously, I don't want to get booted or whatever, tossed or whatever. But in the time I've been here, it just seems like I'm not seeing a whole lot of fucking super positive vibes or energy coming from you about much of fucking anything. And it seems like it seems like an effort. Like, and I don't know if it's an effort or if it's just by sheer virtue of your being frustrated with the online environment right now. But it seems you seem very black-pilled about shit. Like, like we're just in where we're at, and that's where it's gonna fucking be. And fuck everything else, you know. Like, tough shit, you know. Like, I mean, like I guess, like, and I'm watching like the trans thing, and we were on a debate panel about the trans sports thing, and believe me, I heard all sorts of shit about that from your cute little community, your sycophants. Oh, he bailed on Destiny. He just fucking left. I do appreciate you calling me based though, because I am based.
It was ironic because you were misogynistic, but okay.
Well, I was misogynistic because you said a woman can't put her fucking luggage up in the overhead bin. Who's misogynistic?
No, yeah, I think you were I think I'm calling you misogynist because I think you said that you wanted to eliminate women's sports. Did you not say that? I might be misremembering.
No, I said that I considered a possibility that it might be a good idea to degender sports if we can't figure out what the fuck we're doing with trans people.
Okay,
because
so
there literally are not enough trans people to start a league in any fucking sport. And their impact on women's sports is so minuscule and minute at this point that I was totally memeing and don't even find it a relevant conversation to bring up as a point of concern. I think it's concern trolling the whole fucking thing.
Okay, what's your favorite TV show?
I don't really watch TV.
What do you do for fun?
Play music.
Wait, what do you play for music?
I'm a singer and a guitar player.
Okay.
My whole Twitter following is because of my band. It's nothing to do with my political views.
What kind of music?
I have very few people that follow me on Twitter for my political views.
Gotcha.
This is all new.
What kind of music do you guys play?
It's well, we don't anymore. It's a metal band, though.
Okay, gotcha.
Was a metal band.
Okay. I'm trying to lower the temperature of the conversation.
No, I can tell. That's fine. I would rather have an amicable conversation than just fucking scream at each other, so I'm good with that.
Okay. I don't believe that your perceptions of me are accurate. Fuck, I keep eating this thing. I don't mean to. So, I have the vast majority. I don't want to say the vast majority. The majority of the conversations that I have on my stream are pretty like, I don't want to say boring, but they're not very like confrontational. Like, we're not usually screaming at people. It super depends on the topic. I have a lot of reasonable conversations, even from people that I super disagree with, from the left, from the far left, from the right, from the far right. Like, it depends on the topic, but I have like lots of like non-insane conversations.
Sure, and that's admirable.
Sure. I don't even care if it's admirable. One of the things that's frustrating to me is it feels like a lot of people draw very strong opinions about who I am based on what gets clipped in some social media circles. It's very frustrating. I'm also very frustrated. I'm going to just take a stab. Are you like a fan of Vosh or...
I'm going to tell you, like I've told everybody else that fucking asked me this question, I am no GG gang. No GG gang or don't bang. Fuck the GGs. Fuck DGG. Fuck VGG. Fuck any other fucking GG out there. I think you guys create fucking cult-like environments and it's fucking weird.
Okay. I get accused of having a cult-like environment pretty often. But like, if you ever watch my subreddit during like any major drama, there are times when I get pretty major pushback from my fans. I got a lot of pushback relating to like an NFT sponsor. I've gotten a lot of pushback relating to relating to a lot of different types of trans issues that have come up. I've gotten pushback related to most recently like stuff related to like non-binary stuff. Like I get like quite a bit of pushback. I feel like this idea that like my audience are all sycophants literally just comes from people see that I have like a fan base and they're like, wow, they must all just be sycophants. How do you get the perception?
It's from getting dogpiled by your sycophants over shit that's irrational at times, you know.
Sure, but do you think that like
people taking irrational jabs, or like in my case, having your fucking sycophants come onto my YouTube channel because I happen to have an opinion about one of your opinions, and telling me that my fucking daughter should die, you know, shit like that, like, you know, so. Yeah, I do.
Do you not think that?
I do tend to think that there's people amongst your community that, and I don't necessarily think that means your whole community is like that, right? But there is definitely an error or an elucidation of that within your community that I feel goes unaddressed.
Why
How's
do you?
that?
Okay, but unaddressed how? When anytime these people are brought up to me, I ban them. I don't tolerate it happening ever in my community. I don't tolerate comments like that. I have a son. Why the fuck would I tolerate people telling other people that their children should die? Like, do you not understand that any time you get into a disagreement with a large content creator, that two things happen. One, some of their fans are obviously going to come over and say like, oh, you're a dumb fuck or whatever. That's always going to happen. And two, there's also going to be like riffraff that are watching from like the rafters that are also going to come in and comment as well, depending on like what issue they feel strongly about. So for instance, I have a lot of people, because I've debated a lot of right-wingers, I've got a lot of right-leaning people that hate watch me. And anytime I'm talking to a trans person, those same people will show up in my mentions to be transphobic against people that I'm debating. That's always going to happen. But I think I think we can understand that is like a thing that happens without thinking that like my community is like a sycophantic, transphobic, horrible community that is like constantly attacking people. I think those two claims are quite different.
I would agree with you that I don't necessarily think all of your community is transphobic. I don't believe that. I think that your current take on the trans issues are not great. And I think that you're continuing to perpetuate and not lower the temperature of the argument is just, you know, I don't think it's a good look for you. I don't think that, you know, if you're being an ally, that's showing much allyship.
Sure. So I don't, to be clear, I don't, yeah. To be clear, I don't give a fuck about being an ally. I super don't care. I think that's all that shit is really cringe. I don't think that I have any transphobic beliefs, and I don't think that I contribute to transphobia, though. I don't even think any of my beliefs are controversial. I don't know if you want to do it or not, but I'm pretty sure that if you and me were to talk about any of my trans beliefs, by the end of the conversation, you will either agree with me fully, or you'll say, okay, well, I understand your perspective, and of course, that's not transphobic. Can you think of like one belief I have where you're like, that's obviously like a transphobic belief?
Well, I think canceling trans people out of sports entirely, by de facto canceling trans people out of sports, appears like a transphobic take. I mean... Okay,
but then why couldn't I say that your take of opening or eliminating all gender categories, can I say that that's a misogynistic take since you're effectively eliminating women from sports?
No, because I'm not counting out women. I'm not saying women can't participate or can't rise to a level to compete in sports. You know, I do think.
Wait, but you are saying that about trans people, though.
Every ability to compete in a level with any other athlete, whether male, female, trans, or cis.
Okay, so then just to check where we're at in this conversation, do you think that if all the categories were degendered, do you think that women could be competitive with men in most sports?
I don't know. That has yet to be seen. I would like to see what that looks like. And I think that you could start with sports that maybe are not full contact type sports and move from there.
Okay, let's just, okay, I won't argue this point, but I'll just ask you, like, if it could be demonstrated, hypothetically, that women and men could never compete together, that men would outshine in basically every athletic category, would you change your opinion on this? Would you say like, okay, fine, maybe we can't desegregate sports?
I mean, again, like I'm looking for solutions, so I'm open to science that would allow for other solutions. Absolutely. What I'm not open for is a blanket of we're just going to exclude all these people, and that's just going to be the end of the story.
Sure,
That's
I understand that sucks, but I'm trying to ask you, okay? I'm trying to.
And
Hold on. I'm trying to ask you to look at the other side, because all you can see are trans people being excluded, and that's the only thing that you are able to perceive right now. But what I'm asking you to consider is that on the other end, it kind of looks like there's this request for all cis women to be excluded from competitive sports. That's what's at stake on the other end, and for some reason, it seems like you are either not acknowledging that, or you don't believe that, or.
I don't. I like so the argument would be, right, if we did not degender sports and we left them as is, then trans people have no place anywhere in sports.
Or have to have a separate league or compete in an open category or something. It seems that sucks, by the way. I'm being honest with you. That's like a shitty thing, because at the very least in college, like, you're kind of like fucking trans people over and their ability to participate. I agree with that.
Well, you're fucking them over all the way around. You're even fucking them over on in terms of like high school sports and in terms of junior high school sports. Their whole entire sporting like life is gone, is essentially gone, like, because there's never going to be at least not for at least I'd say the next 10 to 20 years, there's never going to be enough trans people in a normal community in order for them to have the ability to compete in a league that is of their own, or a category that is of their own.
Sure.
And that's what my concern is. Then how are they ever going to be athletes? How are they ever going to test their mettle or even know that, what the case is?
Yeah.
Where they stand.
I understand what you're saying, okay? But first of all, so my position only applies to college sports. I don't care who competes with who in like grade school and high school. I think it's a little bit different. So my position is with college sports. Secondly, I think that there are other places beyond like professional sports leagues or college sports for people to play. Like, there are a ton of recreational leagues that exist. There are other types of leagues that exist that are outside of like college or like the NFL or whatever, outside the big leagues. Like, there are places where you can play sports. It doesn't have to be taking up like a college sport position or or like a position like in a professional game, right? So these places do exist, number one. Then number two, I guess something that I'm curious about, if you think that women and men could theoretically compete together, then why couldn't we just say trans women can compete in like cis male leagues? Why can't they just go and do that? If you think that it's possible.
Actually degendering sports, if you really believe that to be the case, then that would happen by default, right? Because trans women would outperform women and end up in leagues that would be predominantly male.
Sure, but right now, the problem with the degendering sports is that, I guess you don't believe this, so it's not like if we degender sports, women are basically done competing. Like, they're not going to have a place like in any top college team. There's no more Division I women's anything. There's no like, for instance, all the women in the WNBA right now, if they wanted to, they could go play in the NBA. Like, it's not like that's locked to only men. Anybody can do that, but women just aren't typically competitive at those levels in sports with men.
Could it be like a societal or an environmental issue where they don't feel safe or comfortable, even if they can compete in those arenas?
No.
No, you don't think it's societal? You don't think there's a, inherent patriarchal ideology that could fundamentally, what do I want to say, deter women from going into men's sports who would otherwise be able to compete with men?
I understand what you're saying, and I do agree that there are social pressures that exist, but I think at the end of the day, I think that there are very real and very substantial differences between the strengths and athletic capabilities of men and women, such that no amount of societal pressure will ever equalize these two things. It will never happen. Again, like, anybody in the WNBA that wants could go play for the NBA, but there's a reason why none of them can, right? And there are like so many stories of, was it like the I think in Canada, like the Olympic hockey team, the female hockey team, I think loses to like a boys high school team, a good high school team, but like a high school team. I think it happened with a women's soccer football team. Has like there are these different scattered examples. It doesn't happen too often, because why would you make these people compete with each other? But like you just can't. The differences are huge. They're like massive. And again, if women wanted to compete in these male leagues, they could right now. But they don't.
But that again goes back to why I even made the statement in the first place about degendering leagues, because it, again, just like how ridiculous that sounds, how it would fucking, like you're saying, completely exclude women. What your suggestion is completely excludes trans people.
I understand, and it's rough, but there's like.
So that's what I'm saying. There's no like.
But hold on. Right, but you understand?
Yeah, but marginalized peoples, like there's no difference.
Well, there is a difference though, because women are 50% of the population, and trans people are like 1% of the population.
Right, and that further buttresses my point that they're not having that big of an impact on women's sports.
But the problem is, for every single trans person that is playing college sports is having an impact on women's sports.
Well, everybody that plays any sport is going to have an impact. That's
okay. If we have leagues created for cis women, that's fine. But every NCAA athlete that is a trans person is an NCAA athlete that is not a cis person, right? And if we've segregated off gender things for women to have spaces to compete, if they feel like they have like an unfair competitive edge against trans women, then I think that's something that's worth talking about.
So you think that cis women do have an unfair competitive advantage against trans women?
Trans women have an unfair competitive advantage against cis women.
Okay. All right. Just want to clarify. You got that backwards there. So just making sure. Of course you want to have the conversation, but we're talking about such a minute population of people. Do you really think that's having such a major impact that we need to create the outrage that's being created over it right now, that there needs to be weeks of conversation about this, that it needs to turn into a huge fucking Twitter battle back and forth between all these fucking parties? Or is this something where maybe, just maybe, people who aren't totally fucking confident about trans people, don't fully understand what trans people go through, might just be getting fear-mongered into buying into a bunch of bullshit?
But
we are talking about such a few number of people.
But the problem is that the fear-mongering is effective because so many people on the left want to die on the hill of trans sports. That's what makes it an issue. I think that if most people on the left were like, yeah, the trans sports thing is pretty weird, like, who knows, like, we'll wait for more data, I don't think this would be nearly as much an issue. But when you see so many people fighting tooth and nail to try to say things like there are no biological differences really between men and women competitors, trans women should be able to compete with cis women, and then you're getting like the odd story that comes out every now and then of a trans woman, dominating cis women, like, all of these are issues that further divide like most of the population in a negative way regarding trans issues. So it's this expenditure of so much social capital for what you say, and what I agree is kind of a niche issue. I don't think it's worth throwing so much progress away over to try to fight and die on the hill of desegregating sports.
So then again, we're still left at this impasse. What do we do with trans people in order for them to be able to compete and live a life that everybody else leads?
They can't live a life that everybody else leads. They already can't. They're trans, right? There's already like going to be some fundamental differences in their navigation through the world, number one. But number two, I think that most people should be allowed to do like most things in life. If that includes like playing sports, I mean, that's fine. I don't think that everybody is entitled to the privilege of playing in college sports or in professional leagues. There are recreational leagues you can play in.
But do you think that entitlement should revolve around gender identity?
Yes, that's how the leagues are. Yeah, we gender our leagues. It's males in one league and females in another league, or females in one league and then an open league for the men.
So, but what about trans men?
What about them?
I mean, we don't talk about them in the sports discussion either. Well,
trans men technically get fucked in your world. Well, not in your world, but trans men get fucked in the world where cis women play with trans women and trans men play with cis men, because trans men will never be competitive with cis men.
There was a study done by the Air Force that showed that actually trans men actually outperformed cis men.
So there's
in push-ups.
Yeah, I understand. There's
running.
One study that gets shown. I think it's like, is it like sample size 15 or something? It's like one study for like an Air Force like push-up test. It's not very good. And there's like a ton of other data and reviews out there that go over the overwhelming amount of, and most like trans debaters, Ashley Online will admit this, Jangles will admit this. Most people that are like really familiar will say like, yeah, there are like still significant advantages that trans women have post-transition compared to cis women. There are like a couple of odd one out studies that you could show, like that Air Force push-up study is one of them, but I don't think that that's enough to overcome like the rest of the evidence that is in favor of trans women still having a significant impact post-transition.
So, I mean, there's inherent advantages with most people who are good at their sport too. Like, so what? Fucking Michael Phelps produces less lactic acid than most people. He has a longer wingspan than most people his height. These are both advantages. He has short legs. These are advantages that make him a better swimmer. Biologically, should he not be able to compete with other people that don't have those biological advantages?
Okay, are you gay or are you straight? Are you bisexual or?
I don't see how that's relevant.
For a straight person typically, if we say a straight man, typically wants to like date or have sexual relationships with women. Now, within that category of women, there's like a huge range of what they would consider acceptable. Some are short, some are tall, some have big boobs, big ass, small ass, whatever. There's a huge range of what a straight person is like willing to have sex with in terms of, well, because it's a woman. When we have segregated sports off between men and women, we understand that there are still going to be differences within those groups, excluding those two groups. So just because we say that,
how
like,
does this
just
differ?
What?
How does this differ? This is the same. So they have a genetic predisposition for advantage. How does that differ than like Michael Phelps having a genetic predisposition for advantage?
Because we haven't separated swimmers into categories of like long torso, short torso, or like lots of lactic acid removal or not locked of. That's not how we segregate those sports. We just segregate them based on men and women.
Right. So if we segregate based off men and women, and somebody defines himself as a woman, genders himself as a woman, and they are a woman, and they have some biological advantages, then so be it. It's what it is. It's the same way that I would look at Michael Jordan or Michael Phelps or anybody else.
Yeah, but the problem is that what is like the end result for that? The end result for that is that women just don't really have any representation in sports anymore. Is that the goal, or is that an acceptable outcome?
That would mean that trans people just completely took over all women's sports, and that there weren't any more cis women in sports.
Well, no, you're talking. Are you talking about just having trans women compete with cis women instead of desegregating sports, or?
Correct.
Okay, but if it is the case that trans women have a significant advantage that they've gotten through living as a different sex, then it seems like we've destroyed the purpose of segregating the leagues based on sex.
And we may find that. Maybe that's the next evolution. Maybe we do end up in a degendered situation further down the line.
Okay.
And that's the other thing that we still aren't clear on either. Like we are dealing with such a small amount of people, for one, and two, we're not even talking about the fact that as this continues to occur in society, in our lives, in where we exist, that there's going to be a lot of people who transition pre-puberty.
I think that prepubescent transitioning is different. I think that if you transition to pre-puberty, I think you have a lot stronger of an argument that you should be able to compete in the league that you identify with.
See, this is where I rage quit last time with you, because I was trying to find out your view on this argument, and you shut it down, and then I got stupid ass fucking GSU talking some bullshit. So this is where my frustration lies. I can even accept that, that you would have concerns, somebody post puberty transitioning, especially if they trained their whole life as a male, and then they end up transitioning and they end up in female sports. I can see where somebody would have a feeling of concern for that. Where I don't see concern, and where our last interaction, where I was fucking furious and I left, was we were talking about pre-pubescent transition, puberty blockers, things like that. And I was getting from you and GSU Gambit dogpiled for saying that should be enough. And at that point, like, how is that not enough? Granted, I think there's the science is still out on it, and I want to see, what comes of that. But I think that's a fucking hell of a different situation than to talk about somebody who's transitioning at 28 years old.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree. I think it is a vastly different situation. I've said in the past, in terms of transitioning and prepubescently, like puberty is where most of the big sex dimorphism happens, right? So, if you're transitioning prepubescently, it seems like we're probably getting rid of a lot of the problems, and it's probably way more okay. But I think I've always had that position.
See, that wasn't elucidated in our earlier conversation, so I do appreciate that. That definitely softens my take towards what you have to say.
Sure. Are you familiar with like gender critical people or TERFs?
Yes.
So one of the big concerns that TERFy women have is they're worried that the existence of trans women threatens women's spaces. Do you understand that when we say things like maybe we should just abolish women's sports or desegregate sports, it feels like it's lending credence to those TERFy arguments?
Oh, I do, and that's why I made it a point to illustrate that that was an ad absurdum. You know, like.
Well, I don't think it is an ad because I think for the vast majority of the time, when I look at how trans people like function in the world, I super don't believe that trans people threaten women's spaces. I don't think that that's the case the vast majority of the time. But when we're talking about accommodating 1% of the population, and then to do that, we're going to eliminate all of women's sports, well, now those TERFy arguments start to look a lot different because it's like, well, hold on. Now we're actually talking about the destruction of a huge woman's space to accommodate a very, very, very small minority of people. Doesn't that seem to be worrisome? Like, why give that ground if we don't even have like good reason to do so?
Well, I mean, is there not a good reason? I mean, humanity is a pretty fucking good reason to treat people like they're accepted and part of society.
But then you're talking about, you keep focusing on the acceptance of trans people, but then you miss the rejection of all cis women.
I don't think that they have to be mutually exclusive things. I think
when you're talking about desegregating leagues, that's what you're talking about, though.
I think you can both accept women as they are, and you can accept trans women in those spaces, and understand that there's got to be other ways that we can segregate sports so that it's fair for people. You know, whether that's you want to talk about, like, I know there's been talk in the Olympics about doing it through testosterone and endocrine testing, things like that. I mean, there's a lot of things
but
that
like
we can do.
the problem is that like this all like sounds nice, like it's all kind of like nice lip service, but like if we segregate based on like endocrine profiles or whatever, like we're still going to basically end up with like gender segregated stuff. Like that's what it's going to look like, right? Like women T levels is nowhere near male T levels, and then any other thing that you segregate by, you're still basically going to wind up having to segregate by gender or sex anyway. Like if we were to like segregate by like height or weight, we're still going to have to segregate within height and weight by male and female. Like a 5'4" female is not going to be competitive with a 5'4" male.
I would say it depends on the sport, but I can see where you're coming from.
Okay, I mean, it like women, for instance, women have to carry more body fat than men, right? Like that's something that a cis woman can never overcome. She always has to be fatter than a man, right?
That's what we'd say statistically is true, sure.
Well, no, that's like biologically a requirement. Like if a woman cuts to like 7% body fat, I think she just dies. I think that's what happens. Like they can't live at those body fat levels. Whereas men can cut to much lower body fat levels just because of like just because of the biology of our bodies. Or cis men and cis women, I would say.
So you're saying that can you send me something on that? Because I have never heard that somebody's gonna die by having under 7% body fat, and I know women bodybuilders, so that would be a new one for me. But
if you truly know, I'm being very nice here. If you truly know a woman bodybuilder, I will stake every dime I have on her repeating to you exactly what I just said. She'll probably say the standards for judging women are different in bodybuilding competitions, and she'll also tell you, yeah, when you talk about like men's extreme body fat cuts of like 2 to 4%, like this insane shit, women can't cut as low as men do when they cut to body fat percentages. I promise that if you ask any bodybuilder woman that, a cis bodybuilder woman, she'll tell you the same thing. Even on drugs and shit, women just can't get to as low a body fat as men can. They'll die. I think their brains like fall apart because you need some level of body fat to like sustain like brain activity and shit. And women just can't get that low.
interesting. That would be a new one that I wasn't aware of. So if that's the case, sure, there's an argument to be made with that.
Leaving the whole transports thing, because obviously that's like the most like insanely contentious topic. Like, do you think that I have any other like insanely transphobic positions, or is this like the only one?
I don't really find you that I don't from the experience I've had with you and what I know of you, I've never really thought like, oh, Destiny's inherently a transphobe. Like, sure, I get pissed off and say shit. I think everybody does. But I don't think you're inherently a transphobe. I think that this is a really tough conversation where it'd be easy to fall on either side of what somebody might deem as transphobic. It would be it, and I think it's just because it is one of those conversations where you are really hedging on a lot of unknowns, and also, there's that, like I said, there's that justice portion of it, where trans people do want to feel included and they don't want to feel like they're on the outside. So, while I don't think that you are transphobic, I think that the view and the constant saber rattling about this specific issue can appear to some as being transphobic, or at least having some aggression towards trans people. If I were in your shoes, I would just fucking say screw it. I don't fucking care anymore. Like, it's not.
Yeah, but
that
the problem is that
point.
like culture wars are like very big driving factors for a lot of voters. How they feel about gay issues, how they feel about LGBT stuff, how they feel about abortion. Like these could be like huge driving like wedge issues for certain voters. So if it is the case that there's like an insane amount of conversation going around about these topics, I kind of have to engage with them. I can't just pretend that like I did that for a while. Like nobody on the left is truly arguing this. Nobody really feels this way, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But when you get people that are like arguing like so much about it online now, who are getting like, massive engagement on their tweets, who are getting real life activists popping up, like at some point you kind of have to contend with it, right?
Don't you think that you incited that engagement? Because I didn't really hear much about this issue until you started talking about it. Like, I mean, it was around, but not at the degree it was in our space until you started speaking on it.
I would say that the Leah Thomas performing well in that one swim meet is what started this conversation, reignited the conversation. Every time a trans woman athlete does well in a college environment, this conversation is going to get reignited. It's not me doing that, right? That's like, maybe I'm the one that brought it to your particular circles, but like everybody is talking about it.
The perpetuation of like the aggression towards trans people as a result of this conversation, do you feel like that's fruitful?
No, I don't. But I think that there are a lot of trans people that would just wish that people would not die on this hill for this issue, because they know that every time it comes up, like their issues are going to be brought to the forefront in the worst way in society over and over and over again. Then instead of having conversations about like, how can we accelerate trans people towards gender affirming care? How can we identify trans people that need help? Instead of like these conversations, now we're wasting so much airtime again talking about whether or not trans women are like identical to cis women for athletic purposes. And then all of the dog shit arguments relating to trans people get wheeled out from people that make me wonder if they know anything about trans issues at all. I think that's one of my biggest issues with this particular thing too.
I'm willing to concede this. I'll take the ICO rules route with it and say, let's just abolish sports until we can figure it the fuck out.
But then
I'm perfectly okay with that too.
But now you've gone like full Russia and revitalizing NATO, right? Like when you say we should abolish sports, all of those turfy arguments seem like they have so much credence, right? Well, today they wanted to abolish sports. Tomorrow they're going to abolish all of our bathrooms. The day after that, they're going to abolish like every woman's space. And now now everybody's like on alert. And now all cis women who before might have been like, whatever about trans issues, they're like, holy shit, I need to be against trans people because they're going to destroy all of my spaces.
But these are the same people that are going to say that no matter what.
No, I don't believe that.
Say that no matter fucking what. They've
Sure.
already been packaged and sent away off to the shipping yard to make their shitty votes against whatever trans policy is out there.
Okay, let's say I hear this argument a lot. They're going to do it no matter what. If that's the case, why do you care what I say? If people are going to believe what they're going to believe no matter what, because I hear people say that a lot. Oh, well, they're going to care no matter what. Okay, well, then who cares what I say? Why does it matter what I say? They're going to believe whatever anyway. How can I simultaneously have a bad influence on people while you're also telling me that these people are beyond influence regardless?
Well, I just say something about what you have to say because I have to hear it, and I have to hear about it constantly, and it's all over my fucking Twitter feed, That's why, I mean, come on. That's why anybody says anything to you, Destiny, because whatever you say ends up blasted all over their Twitter feed, and if you're anywhere in the Twitch politics spectrum, we're gonna have to deal with whatever it is that you put out there because, again, you're the biggest politics streamer on any platform, outside of say TYT or something like that, So yeah, I mean, you're gonna get that. You're generating a lot of buzz and you're generating a lot of attention, so that's gonna happen. You can't expect for people that are sharing the space with you not to want to say something or confront you about it.
Sure, that's fine. But if you're going to use that reason, then you can't expect that when like we start to argue that women's spaces should be eliminated, that like cis people and like normal people in society aren't going to see that and feel threatened, right? We should be able to acknowledge that, like, okay, yeah, I can understand why these people might feel really defensive over their spaces now.
I do understand why they feel defensive over their spaces. To be fair, I have a daughter, and if you don't think that it's come up to me, like, she wants to play sports, right? And she has trans friends, and I've wondered myself as a parent, what's that going to look like with her playing sports? But at the end of the day, she's quite content playing sports with her trans friends, so I've never expressed much of a
Sure, that's
concern
fine, but like
about it,
how old is your daughter?
She's 13.
Okay, so your daughter's 13 right now. Anybody can play high school sports if they want to. I think everybody should play high school sports, because like at that age, like sports are about learning to socialize with people, getting out, being physical, being part of a team, like extracurriculars. I think everybody should be doing sports. Grade school. I have no problem with like trans women playing with cis women in high school and grade school. That's fine. I think that's cool. But when we look at something like high school volleyball, I think there are like 250,000 high school volleyball players. When we look at like college volleyball, there are like 2,000 volleyball players. So if your daughter wants to play past high school and then going into college, she has to start competing with people that have a massive biological advantage that was inherited like prior to transitioning. Well, I think now the playing field looks a lot different, and that I think there's more at stake here, because it's not just a spot on a high school team, LOL. Now it's like you have a very limited number of spots that exist on college teams for women to play, and if those start to, even one trans person being on there, it's like, well, fuck, like this person's inheriting so much biological advantage from when they were male. It doesn't seem fair that a cis woman would lose a spot on the team now for that.
What's supposed to happen then? Like this is where I keep coming back to. It's like there's always going to be more cis women than there are trans women. Trans women can't take up all those spaces.
Not all of them, but any of them. If the spaces are segregated by gender, and if somebody's able to inherit a huge advantage because of gender, that's the whole reason why the spaces are segregated, right?
I mean, I suppose it seems more like a societal norm than anything to me, but sure, we could say that. That's what I think it's come to. That's what the common reasoning is, sure.
Do you really think that the difference between men and women in sports is just societal norms?
I think that has a lot to do with it. I think that if women are trained from a young age in similar sports as men are, you might see a different scenario play out as far as women's ability to compete with men. For example, if you trained a woman to play football from the time she was a kid, the same way we train males, don't you think that it's possible that woman could be competitive with males because they are actually training in that?
Absolutely not even close.
They are never conditioned in those types of sports. They're from the time they're young. They are never brought up in those types of sports.
Men are just like
gymnastics. But women in gymnastics, they grow up in those sports and they exceed.
They don't. There are some women's events, but men competing in those events would destroy women. Women only succeed in the events where they're kind of like locked into it. But like there are videos on the internet of like Olympic medal winning women watching men doing their routines, saying like, what the fuck, I didn't even know that was possible. Whether we're talking about like doing floor or the beam or anything else, like it's just, given the same amount of training time, like a man's body is always going to be able to progress farther athletically than a woman's body. But this sounds like it's a little contentious, so I guess I don't need you to buy all this right now.
Well, here's where I'll kind of synopsize my views on what you're asking me about. Number one, Destiny, I don't think you're a transphobe. I think that you've made some takes that make trans people very uncomfortable, and they're not feeling very good about you in a lot of their spaces right now. From what I've seen, okay. I don't think that necessarily means you're 100% transphobic or hate trans people. I don't believe that. because I know you've done some advocacy work, and I know you've given trans people a space in your platform, to have a voice. So I don't see that. I just think that this is a really bad take, and I think the perpetuation of the vitriol around this take, it doesn't do you any favors as far as optics. But that said, hopefully I think you're a well-intended person, generally speaking. I hope that you come to a point where you realize not everybody on the online left is fucking crazy, and that a lot of us do really want to make tangible progress, and that even if you hate Bernie, some of us Bernie bros, we still, are out here fighting the good fight, wanting good things to happen for our country, and we don't all expect it to be a revolution. Some of us do understand incremental change has to happen. Of course, maybe that comes with age. Maybe because I'm older than a lot of these folks that are, on Twitch and YouTube. There's a different, I see things through a different lens. But I do think that there's a possibility for progress, and I do think there's a possibility for change. And I would invite you to try to engage with good faith people that are to the left of you to have those conversations.
All right. I mean, I try, but I mean, a lot of them at this point aren't even willing to have a conversation. But okay.
I'm having a conversation with you, and I'll be glad to do it again anytime.
Gotcha. All right. Well, anything else you want to chat about?
No, that's all I got, man. I appreciate you taking the time with me. I've been around in your orbit here and there, through the Prime Walk-On panels. So it's good to be able to have a conversation with you one-on-one without having a bunch of people yelling between us. So certainly appreciate that, and thank you.
Yep. Well, hey, have a good one, man.
You too.
I
keep hating your life then, working class Andy.
What can I say to a person like this? I don't even know what to have. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to say. I just want to play video games. Somebody emailed me a big thing on this, and then they sent me a video of them.
This is depressing.
I don't know if these guys, if it says Olympic champions, that means they had medals, right? But I think you can watch them, and you'll see men doing routines of other people or whatever. But I think that people have this. Sorry, that was really obnoxious. We're not watching this whole thing, but
What? Oh. I'm lost.
He's better than.
Oh my god! What?
I think it's just
That was my dream connection. A noti for an aerial side flip. I did it when I was 10, and then I grew and I couldn't fit it. Grew all the way to 5'2".
I don't know what any of this shit is, but they mentioned in this video that there are some moves, certain types of flips, I guess, that male bodies can do, even doing floor routines that I don't think are possible for women, that have never been done by a woman in competition before. So even on Olympic stuff, it's not women are elite in these categories and men are just not competitive because of the difference. I don't know.
Hello, how's it going?
It's going great.
Amazing.
So, I just wanted to ask. I mean, obviously we're speaking about the transports thing, but I've heard you're transitioning yourself. I've heard you're transitioning yourself to fascism. Is that true?
Yeah, true.
Based. Okay.
Wait, is it better now?
No,
your
still
voice.
sound
Is it
like
too
you're
loud?
fucking Dutch or whatever. God.
Ah, Jesus Christ.
Have you two spoken before?
No,
No,
I don't know this fucking loser.
never.
Okay.
I would never.
Anyway, what are we doing? Dario, you said to me, I want to speak to Destiny about trans people in sports. Destiny's a bigot, and I want to stand up for my trans brethrens.
Brave.
And Destiny, you said to me, we need to completely eliminate trans people
Period. Yes.
from
Yes.
sport.
No.
From
just
sport.
Yes.
Period.
Just, yeah.
Period. Anyway, look, just fucking talk about it. I don't know. Do you want to do opening statements? I've not planned for this really. What's going on?
Wait, I mean, if you just want to eliminate all trans people, then I don't think we disagree on anything.
No,
I
oh
was
my
just
God.
thinking.
Can we say this? This is allowed on YouTube.
It's a whole other world out here, my friend.
Based.
At least on faster YouTube it is. Okay, what do you want, Dario? I trust you've heard all my other arguments about this. You better be bringing something new, okay? And not some dumb shit like height doesn't matter. Go.
Okay, wait.
Oh no!
First off, no. Wait, first off. Okay, first off, you've talked to 20 people about this, but there's no way I can listen to all of your fucking conversations. Okay?
Oh god.
I heard like your first one, and I heard the one with the dumb dude, like the dumb dude, non-binary dude. Do you know who I'm talking about? Fuck, I don't know his name.
Mr. Beard?
Yeah, I heard that one.
Okay. We don't call him
And
that,
you're-
okay? He's a chill guy.
Okay. Oh yeah. He was actually he had a conversation with him. I thought that was pretty good, but for some reason, whenever people speak to you, they kind of lose their minds. I don't know.
I'm an intimidating
Is
guy.
this is that something you've experienced before?
God, yes. I'm intimidating! I'm scary!
Wait, how far are you in Elden Ring actually?
About 6 inches into your mom's asshole. That's how far I am, okay?
Jesus Christ. Okay.
What do you want to talk about, Dario? Stop stalling, okay? Get to the points. Chat's not gonna feed you lines. What do you want?
Okay. So wait, so what is actually your like stance on trans people? Like, is it just like no ever? Like,
I
no way
think trans
ever,
people should
or-
probably be allowed to play with their identified gender in like grade school and high school as long as they're making some attempt to medically transition. And then but college sports and like professional leagues, well, college sports probably not. Professional leagues, I guess they can make their own decisions, but I mean, I'd say probably not. And then you've got like recreational leagues can do whatever they want.
Okay, but why? I guess so. Why not? Right? Is it because you think it's unfair, or
Because the divisions are made by gender categories, and trans women have an advantage because of a sex difference.
Okay. Sure, but okay. But how do you? So I guess my question is, how do you measure that advantage, right? So like my
Well, we can
argument-
measure it with any number of studies that have looked at the differences in lean body mass, or we can do like the fact that physiologically they're still different when it comes to like hormones and stuff, or we can measure athletic performance before and after like transitioning. I mean, in any number of ways. Like even studies following 36 months afterwards still seem to support this idea that there is a difference. So.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm like, so I guess just to clarify that, I'm not here to talk about like the biology or like the studies and stuff because I think we mostly agree there. So from what I've heard, it seems to be that you don't really. So I think I heard you say this to Supreme in your talk with him, like short talk, that you don't really care about like the outcomes of it, right? So like even if trans people were getting crushed. Like trans women were getting crushed in like women's sports, like you still wouldn't
Yeah, it's
think
still
it's
probably
fair.
not. Yeah, it's probably if they retain advantages related to sex. Yeah, it seems not to be fair.
Yeah, I guess that's the one that confuses me, right? Because when I sort of try to envision these categories, like what I see is I think okay, women's sport and like quote unquote men's sport or like all sport, right? But like women's sport is like the category is like what is like within like the parameters of the sport, like you should be able to perform what is possible from like a biological woman standpoint, right? So in my head, if a trans woman through any number of like whatever measures they can take, like let's say it's like 5 years on hormones and like surgery or whatever, like whatever we can think of, right? If they can make themselves fit within like the category of or like what we would expect from like a cis woman, then that would be fine, right? So for the
If
height
they could
argument,
theoretically get there, maybe, yeah.
yeah. So like for the height argument, right? So I would say, and like I guess I would be more extreme here than like some quote unquote trans advocates, right? But I would say if you're playing like a sport, like let's say basketball or whatever, where height is like really important, and you are a trans woman who is taller than like the tallest cis woman who plays in that league or that competition, then you can't compete, right? I would say you cannot compete there. But if you're like if you are within like let's say you're the average height of the league or
I
whatever,
don't know.
as a trans
That's like that puts us in a really weird spot where we're like waiting for like cis women to grow to a certain point to allow a whole new class of trans people. And the reality is that even if you have very few trans women, if a cis male is an average height cis male is already ahead of 98% of cis women when it comes to height. So it wouldn't take that many trans women competing to like, oh my God, to like throw off the balance of like the representation of trans women versus cis women in any like sporting event because the difference is so huge.
But what if the category is only cis women, right? What if trans women don't fit within like the parameters of like what is considered as acceptable, right? If we just say, like, we look at cis women and we're like, okay, this is what is possible within like the cis woman category, and if you're a trans woman, you can compete if you're within those parameters.
It's
like,
weird because of the advantage that comes from sex. Like, let's say, for instance, there was like the strongest cis woman like could lift so much, so we just made it so that if you could lift more as a trans woman, you're not allowed in, right? Well, a trans woman might be able to hit those metrics, but they don't have to train half as hard to do it because they get to train during a part of their life where they have like male biology. So like, is that fair now because they haven't overcome like the maximum like lifted thing, even if the amount of training was like significantly less? Like, it's super messy, and it.
But so my question is like, why does training matter in this aspect, right? So let's say hypothetically, right? Let's say cis like trans women were competing, right? And they were in my world, right? They were within the parameters, and they were doing just like average in the leagues, or like even like losing most of there's never a trans woman who won. Right, like, would it matter if they maybe had like some of them had an easier time getting there?
Yeah,
like,
I think so, because training is like a really important part of like being an athlete. Like time spent training, like there's like an interesting trade-off. It's hard to explain this, but there's like the peak athleticism biologically in a male's life, I want to say is between the ages of like, I think it's between the ages of like 16 to 19 is the peak physical capability biologically. But that's not when men compete the best they can, because they haven't had enough time to train to realize that advantage. So even if your testosterone is peaking in your late teens as a male, you haven't had enough time spent training to take advantage of that biology. So there's an interesting balance of where is your peak biology at versus time and complexity of training to give you this like equation for athletic performance. So if you're able,
wouldn't this be wouldn't this in my world, right? Wouldn't this be selected for in the results, right? So like,
yeah,
let
but
me
I'm just saying that like the
extreme.
results, like what if it is the case that for a whole number of sociological reasons, trans women just don't train as hard or don't train as much as cis women, but they're still super competitive. Like, is that fair now just because they're not like outdoing cis women? It's still not fair.
Well, but I can turn it around and I can say if they were not competitive at all, let's say they were getting like they were placing last place in every like women's league, like would you then have an issue with them being able to have trained better? Like,
I think that there's maybe not, just because we wouldn't be talking about it, but I mean, yeah, there would still be an issue, right? Like, let's say it was the case that there were like some forms of like let's just say there was like a gene that made for like for like a very weak cis male. And we were like, oh, well, look, like these types of cis men could theoretically play in women's leagues and never really like be at the top. Like, would everybody feel okay about that? Or is that okay? I don't think that's okay just because they're not competitive, right?
Sure, but then I would say the difference would be that they are not women, right? Or like they wouldn't be considered.
Well, no, hold on. I wholesale. That's not what we're talking about. They're not women, right? That's like the most boring non-answer. Like, we're not talking about who's socially.
I mean, I could even grant you like I could even grant you that and say I think I don't think it would be accepted, right? But from my view, I think they should be able to compete. Like,
wait, really? Theoretically, there was some gene that made like a male like really weak as an athletic competitor. They should be able to compete in women's leagues as long as they never like broke a record or never like placed that well. Oh my god, dude.
I don't know.
Okay, I mean, I would say no because we gender segregate the leagues. It doesn't make sense to do that, right?
Sure.
I think we're like, if we take a step back and look at the conversation, like we're in an area that's like 99% of people in society are going to be removed from everything.
Sure, I guess so. So my answer would be, I guess. So I agree. We gender separate the leagues, right? Obviously, right. So my question would be, why do we do that, right? And like in my
because we
view,
want to give a space. There's not a view of it. There's one reason and one reason alone, and that's because we want to give women a place to be competitive.
Yes. Yeah, exactly, right. But that's what I'm saying, right? If they were like, in this hypothetical scenario, there was like a type of man who was like getting crushed even in the women's leagues, right? You would still be achieving the goal of giving a league where women were competitive, right?
Yeah, theoretically, but like it's just, if we decide to segregate by a certain thing to make things competitive, you can't start breaking that segregation just because you found some people that won't be competitive otherwise, right? Well, it's like saying, like, let's say we have like 160-pound weight class or whatever, but like some men that are more fatty, like aren't going to win even if they're 180 pounds. So we let them compete at the 160 pounds. Like, well, hold on, this is like
Sure, but there's already kind of that in like sports general, like just in like in normal categories, right? So like I can't believe I looked this up, right? But I looked up like average male height by race in the U.S., right? And like I believe the average like Asian man is like a 5'7", and the average white man is 5'10", but the average woman is 5'4", right? So theoretically, like the difference between the average woman and the Asian man in the U.S. is the same as the Asian man and the white man, right, in terms of height.
Okay, I mean, if you want to argue for like racially segregated leagues, then go for it. But that's not where like any of the conversation is at. Okay, wait, hold on, wait. Hold on, I can't. Okay, the argument, like, because this is where like all of these get into these like really weird areas of like, well, some races of people are taller than other people, and some people naturally do not like the guys, and blah blah blah. If you want to talk about creating leagues where we separate people based on race, or if you want to talk about like creating leagues where we separate people based on body parts, then you're welcome to have that conversation. That's not how any sports league is divided up right now. Like nobody, we're closer to communism than doing that with our sports leagues. So they're just like,
I agree.
Yeah. So these are like
Yeah. The reason why I'm bringing that up is, I guess, just to discuss like why do we separate the leagues, right? And I think the reason why it's separated is because we want a space where women are competitive, right? So what I'm proposing is basically saying, well, if we have that space where women are competitive and trans women can within that space fit within those parameters and they're competitive.
That's not how it works. You can't create a space to segregate something by one class and then make exceptions afterwards. That's not how it works. We just don't do that. If we have divisions separated by grade in school, in high school and elementary school, that doesn't mean that some exceptionally weak high schoolers are allowed to play sports with some grade schoolers. That's just not how that works. Once you've made the division has to be respected. If you want to make the division based on something different, then you have to argue the affirmative for that different division. You can't just say, we have this division, we accept it, now let's go and find a whole bunch of exceptions because LOL. Because it still makes it kind of sort of work. That's just not how that works.
I think I understand where the disagreement is, maybe, right? So maybe the disagreement is just like, what do we mean when we say separated by sex, right? So I agree it's separated by sex, right? But it's not separated by sex because women have ovaries or whatever and men don't, right? Like that's not the point, right? Sex is just a proxy for a certain type of attribute, right? A certain list of attributes that's just like shortened by it being sex. Like, do you agree or disagree?
A little bit, yeah. But I mean, there's also like, we broadly recognize there is like a female thing in society that we want to have like representation in sports and whatnot too, right?
Well, I guess socially, sure.
Otherwise, we would just say, fuck them. Like, why do women need women's sports? We'll just have like real sports and fuck women's sports, right?
Well, sure, but women do need I'm 100% on board. Like, I am advocate. I think women's sports is a good thing, and I think even esports, right? I think where like theoretically there shouldn't be much of a difference. I actually think women's leagues are really good, because I think it shows that like more women get engaged in those leagues, and they wouldn't necessarily be playing otherwise. Right, so I'm on board with that. I'm just saying, like, theoretically, like, because I think in my head, like, just saying no trans women are able to compete ever, like no exceptions or whatever, I think that's like too extreme, right? And I don't think we need to be that extreme.
What about
like,
people with disabilities that aren't allowed to compete? Like, I mean, like, it sucks, but like, you can't ruin the competitive integrity of a certain league just because you want to be more inclusive. Like, that's. Not everybody is like guaranteed a right to like an NCAA spot or like in a professional league. That's like, I reject that this is a huge driving issue in society that like represents some real oppression. Like very few people are involved in college sports or elite level sports. I don't think it destroys your ability to be part of society by not having an exclusive spot in like these areas. Like, I don't agree that it's like a huge like thing in society or whatever. Like most likely it's not going to affect a lot of people, right? But that's kind of why I'm also making this argument, right? I don't think there's that many trans women who are even wanting to compete, and I think even fewer, given the restrictions, would even be like. So why would we attack the integrity of the entire division for like such a hyper niche thing? It's like so much political and social capital is used on this issue for no reason.
But isn't it right now the case that they are competing? Right. So like right now, the status quo is that they are competing. Right. So
Well,
you're advocating
now
for
it is,
changing
yeah.
that.
Well, because
But you're-
I wouldn't even argue it's really the status quo yet. It's still like a highly contentious, relatively new thing. I think everybody can agree with that, right? Because every single time like a trans person like succeeds well in some area, we're all talking about, you know, Caster Semenya or whatever, or we're all talking about Leah Thomas, or we're all talking about like whoever late weightlifter. Like, I think it's still like it's still new, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
Because I feel
guess,
like every
yeah.
time this happens too, like either the Olympic Committee or like the NCAA is always talking about like, oh, well, we're looking at the rules again. Like maybe like everybody's like, it's still all in flux.
So is it just the working out thing that's like really your linchpin? Is it that, or is there anything else?
I don't know what the working out thing means. What are you saying?
Like that they can like did you say they can work out more, or like
They can
have
do
an easier
everything
time?
better. They have exogenous hormones. They can maintain like lower levels of body fat. They don't have to worry about hormone fluctuations or periods anywhere near as much. They get to train for some part of their life as a biological male. They have a lot
I meant
of
like the difference between I meant the difference between like where I'm at and where you're at, right? So my argument is that I guess I can accept, right? Like we can say that they have an easier time getting to their, like they don't have to train as much, right? Like I can accept that, and I can say if they just fit within like all of the parameters and they're not like crushing the leagues, they're just doing like average or whatever, then I feel like it's not really a big of a problem and we don't have to deal with it, right? But that, I guess that would theoretically still be changing, like in putting in more restrictions than the status quo, right? I guess I just feel like your position of like them being able to train as a male being like the deciding factor that obviously we can't really change unless, as you said, it's in like as a teenager or whatever they are transitioning, then I feel like that's, yeah, I guess maybe if that is a big enough thing, then maybe I guess I would change my mind on that. So maybe I just need to read some research, but I don't know. Like, have you read anything about like how big the difference in like training is?
I mean, we see that like even after 36 months, there's still like pretty big differences in like lean body mass, and then all the other things that I mentioned, like you'd never have to worry about periods. You've got a steady source of hormones that never fluctuate. You can maintain lower levels of body fat. I mean, like these are just factoids that.
I mean specifically like the train, like how much easier is it for like a trans woman having trained as a man to get to like a peak level compared to
I don't
like
think that data even exists yet, right? It's still like a highly niche issue that. So no, I don't know. And I think that like lefties are like infinitely like moving the goalpost of like, do you have a study that shows what a 14-year-old transitioning person's max bench press is going to be after 2.5 years of training? Like, no, like that data doesn't exist. It's probably never going to exist, right? Because these issues are incredibly niche. So we're just going by what we have so far. Like we can see that the differences are unbelievably obvious. Like the effect size is there, the studies are starting to be there, the sample sizes are decent, but like when it comes to these like hyper specific, like what if somebody transitioned when they were 16 after watching 3 seasons of the Teletubbies, and then we're only looking at their ability to dunk when they're on basketball courts that have been waxed with this type of, I can't, yeah, like I don't know if that data exists yet. I don't think these studies haven't been done yet. No.
I mean, if it's Lala that's your favorite Teletubby, then you should probably be banned.
Maybe.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think I have much more actually.
Okay. What do you want, Chud?
How you feeling about the old ban?
Oh, you know, it is what it is. I've kind of been waiting for it for a while, so it's not that surprising.
Wait, can I ask you a different question, Destiny?
What's up?
While I have you, while I have your attention. How do you cope with when the mainstream and the liberal media also fails, just like the conservative media? Like how do we cope as that? Like the first time I experienced that really was like with the Carl Rittenhouse stuff, like the fucking, what was it, like there was like a news site or whatever who wrote like some bullshit, and I was just like, because like so far I've been like growing up and I've been really I'm a really trusting person of like the mainstream, the liberal media. Like I generally just accept that if it's like in the Washington Post and New York Times and stuff, then it's good. But I mean, if we can't even trust those, then who do we trust, I guess?
Destiny.
Okay. Amazing.
I mean, demand better from content creators, but nobody gives a fuck about factual accuracy, so it doesn't really matter at the end of the day.
Damn.
Okay. Was there anything else?
Is there, Chud? You tell me. It's your show, Chief. How's life going?
I don't know.
Give us the prompts, Judd. Prompts.
I mean, listen. I mean, I do skirt the line sometimes of what's acceptable and what isn't. I feel so. It's kind of troubling to see other people get clapped, and yeah, I mean, it's not just a selfish thing.
Well, that's what you just made it sound like. That's what I just heard from you.
I know, I did.
Yeah.
I did make it sound very selfish, but I mean, I'm going to be honest. The first thing we all care about is ourselves, right?
No, not as an American. I care about other people, but I understand your perspective.
What? But he's saying over in England, we're very selfish race, very selfish ethnicity.
I'm saying that when toast is a cuisine in your country, I can understand why you don't care about
I mean,
many
I'm
other
going to
people.
be honest. I don't know if that's true because we, all these minorities who we conquered, right, for being weaker than us, we were like, look, we'll give you back your land, okay? We've already caused enough trouble.
Uh-huh.
And we don't want to cause any more. We know that you're inferior, so have the land back as a measure of goodwill.
Have you watched the new
What's
Marvels? The new Marvel series? No.
Thanks. Yeah. I'm speaking to Mr. Girl shortly about transfer culture. What's your thoughts on transfer culture?
I think there were a few things that I disagreed with in that video. But I don't remember exactly what it was, so what are you going to do?
I think he just makes very broad statements and acts like trans people are some sort of monolith, and he's talking about a particular sector, I think, of online communities. I don't know. That's the way I read it anyway.
Yeah, I mean, like, these are like, yeah, I think he speaks with a broad brush sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, there's one other thing, actually. This can maybe be the last thing. I don't like to pry too much in people's personal lives, but I've got to ask. I've heard that you're not coming on this Mr. Girl panel because you're going to a sex dungeon. Is that correct?
I don't know. It's like a swingers club.
Oh, right, okay.
But maybe, who knows? We'll see. Maybe I'll stay home. I don't know. Depends on how I feel. We'll see what's going on.
Okay, well, have a good fun with that. I'm going to go now. Thanks for coming on, Dario. Good to speak to you, Destiny.
I love you. Be careful, buddy.
Catch you later. Bye-bye.